Hi guys, Freddy here with another rules breakdown, and this time I'm going to cover the second edition Star Wars role-playing game by West End Games. Now I've covered the first edition rules before, and I've covered the second edition revised and expanded in a video which was the prototype for this rules breakdown series. But I've never covered the second edition before, and I thought I'd go back and do these because while it's very similar to the revised and expanded, there are some differences, and a lot of people prefer the second edition rules. So I thought I'd go over some of those differences and maybe offer some hints and things that I use to speed the system up slightly. I'm also going to be using a PDF copy because although I know I own 2 copies of this rulebook, I cannot find either of them. I know I bought myself one way back in the day, back in 92 or so when it came out, but I was also given a copy when one of the people in my role-playing group was moving house and they were giving up their rules to make room for games that we were actually still playing, because we hadn't played second edition in a few years at that point, although I've gone back and started GMing it again. But both of those seem to have disappeared. There's so much disappeared from my collection. Now I've got a full shelf behind me of Star Wars stuff, but the second edition rulebook's not amongst them. So I'm going to have to use a PDF copy. I don't recommend downloading rulebooks off the internet and using pirate copies of rules, because the designers of the games deserve to be paid for their work. But I've got 2 copies, so I have no other choice while I can't find them. Anyway, over to the rules. So this is the Star Wars The Role-Playing Game second edition rules by West End Games. Now, the skills in this work in very much the same way to the other versions of the Star Wars Role-Playing Game by West End Games, in that you have skills and attributes measured in a certain amount of dice and a certain amount of pips, which will usually be written as, let's say, 4d plus 2. Now that means that when you're rolling dice, you're rolling 4 dice, and then you're adding 2 to the result at the end of that. So, going over to our dice roller here, we throw 4d6, we get 12. Now, what's worth bearing here is the first number, because you throw a wild die in second edition Star Wars. Now what that means is the first die can explode, so if you roll a 6, you roll again and adding to the entire result, or you can lead to a failure. So when you roll a 1, the Games Master has the choice of making it deduct, so you lose your other highest dice. So in this case, if that 2 had been a 1, you'd have lost the 6. So you'd have only got a roll of 5. Or they can add a complication to the game, which allows them to write in something, you pull your blaster, you fire, you miss, but it also jams, and now you'll have to fix your blaster. Now, target numbers that you're rolling against here, if we flick to page 166, 167 in the PDF, we can see difficulty numbers up the top here. So very easy tasks require a result of 1 to 5. Easy tasks, 6 to 10, moderate 11 to 15, difficult 16 to 20, very difficult 21 to 30, or heroic 31. Or if you want to add a random difficulty, you'll be rolling a number of dice against them. So 1d, 2d, 3d to 4d, 5d to 6d, 7d to 8d, or 9 dice plus on a heroic roll to create a difficulty number. Now, initiative in second edition I always found to be a little odd, because if we look at page 28 here, each side picks the character with the highest perception, who then rolls a perception attribute check. Characters may not spend character points or force points on this roll, although penalties for being wounded count. Whichever side gets the highest roll gets to decide who declares who acts first, their side or the enemy. So, quite simply, you're just rolling to see who gets the highest. One person from the hero's side or the player's side, one person from the opposing side. Whoever gets the highest gets to decide whether they go first or second, and that's initiative. It's that simple. Now, you can get extra actions by spending points from your skill. So if you've got 4 dice plus 2 with your blaster skill, and you're rolling 4 dice plus 2 to shoot somebody, if you're taking 2 actions and you're shooting twice, then you're losing a dice from your skill, and you're only rolling 3 dice plus 2. Likewise, if you're dodging or doing anything else, piloting a land speeder while you're shooting a blaster, whatever, you lose 1 dice for each extra action you take. Now, personally, I don't like that system. And the way I handle initiative in Star Wars D6 is everybody rolls their perception for initiative, and we go from highest result to lowest. And then I let it go through cycles. So if somebody's taking a second action, they will go after the last person who getting their first action, and we flow through again, and third action, fourth action, etc. But I always let everybody have their first action before the second action start, third actions, if people are spending the dice to get those actions. So in Star Wars 2nd Edition, you're rolling your combat skill, whichever relevant one. So if you're wielding a lightsaber, it'd be a lightsaber skill. If you're shooting a blaster, it's going to be blaster skill. But there's vehicle blasters, there's starship weapons, whatever. It doesn't matter. You're rolling your skill. So let's say you've got blaster skill of 5D. Now you're rolling that against a target number of either the difficulty of the weapon. So if you're wielding a lightsaber, that's a difficult target number. Or the range of a ranged weapon. So on page 167 here, we can see the ranges of holdout blasters. We've got short, medium, and long ranges. So if something is at 12 meters, then it's at long range, and you roll the difficulty for that. A heavy blaster pistol has a range of up to 50 meters. A sporting blaster has a long range of up to 350. Now that's all thrown out the window if the target's trying to avoid the attack by rolling their dodge, or by doing a brawling parry, or melee parry if they're wielding a weapon, or lightsaber parry if they're wielding a lightsaber. Anyway, they roll their skill, and that becomes your target number to hit. And it's as simple as that. You're doing a difficulty against difficulty roll, and whoever gets the highest, so blaster against dodge, bowcaster against dodge, melee weapons against brawling parry, lightsaber against melee parry, whichever combination you want, however it works out, and whoever gets the highest either hits or parries. Now, a complication is thrown into this by scale, which is also listed here on page 167. You can see in 2nd edition, it deals with scale in a slightly strange way, by dice caps. So we've got this to hit chart here, and we can see that a speeder trying to hit a character has its dice capped at 4. So let's go back to the dice roller. Let's say they've got a vehicle blaster skill of 5 dice. We're throwing those. Now, because they're shooting at a character, the 5 and the 6 here are capped to 4s. So instead of being 2, 1, 5, 6, 1, it's 2, 1, 4, 4, 1. So they're losing 3 points. They've actually only rolled a 12. Because it's more difficult for large targets to hit small targets. You know, it's difficult for a Star Destroyer to shoot a single person, for example. Now, these difficulties are built in here. Now, in 2nd edition, they're a little odd. For example, a capital ship actually has more difficulty dodging a Death Star, because the dodges are capped as well. So a character attempting to dodge a speeder, their dice is capped at 5. So they roll their dodge, let's say it's 5 dice again, we throw. Now those 2 6s are capped at 5s, so we lose 2 points, they get an 18, which against that speeder would mean they managed to dodge. So you've got dice caps. Now, as I was saying, capital ships here have difficulty dodging Death Stars, but have no difficulty hitting Death Stars. But Death Stars have a massive die cap on hitting capital ships. It does involve a lot of looking up this table, and it can be a little confusing in play, which is why I much prefer the 2nd edition revised and expanded of a standard number of dice. So speeder shooting at a character, the character gets 2 dice extra to dodge, but the speeder gets 2 extra dice to damage. It's a nice simple system rather than having to look up this table all the time. Now, damage in 2nd edition is pretty much the same as all the other D6 editions. Basically, you're rolling a number of dice based on the damage of your weapon against a target's strength or body if they're a vehicle. So, we've got the weapons chart here on page 167 again, and we can see a heavy blaster pistol does 5 dice, an ordinary blaster pistol does 4 dice, E-Web heavy repeating blaster does 8 dice. So, shooting a normal blaster, we're throwing that. Obviously, any die caps included, and we can see here going in our combat with a character against a speeder. The speeder dice are not capped against the character, although the character's dice are capped against the speeder. So, the speeder gets 20 for damage. The character, let's say they're only 4 dice strength, which is maximum sort of human normal. But that is capped at a 3, according to this chart. Speeder's capped at 3. But we got a 6. So we get to re-roll the 6, but we're only going to include a 3 here. So we've got 13, we drop 3 from that, we've got 10, and we need to roll an extra d6, and it gets a 1, so we've got 11. So the speeder got 20, the character gets 11, so 9 points of damage get through. Now for damage, we've flicked back to page 166, the page before, and we can see on the damage charts here. So, characters have stunned, wounded, incapacitated, mortally wounded, and killed statuses. Now if they're killed, they're dead outright. If they're mortally wounded, then they're on the ground, but they can be medicaled and saved. If they're incapacitated, then they're down on the ground for D10 minutes. They're unconscious and incapable of acting. A wounded character takes a penalty of 1 dice from now on to all their actions, apart from strength rolls to resist more damage. But they also lose all their actions for the rest of the round and cannot act again until the next combat round. Whereas a stunned character takes 1 dice penalty to all their dice rolls, apart from wounds, and that lasts for this round and till the end of the next round, but then is gone, although they are counted as still being affected for up to half an hour. Now, a character can take a number of stuns up to their strength. So if they've got a 3 dice strength, they can receive 3 stuns before they fall unconscious and are actually stunned unconscious. If a character receives a 2nd wound, they automatically move up to incapacitated, and an incapacitated character that takes a wound or another incapacitate move up to mortally wounded. Now, when I'm running the game, I actually have altered the dice rolls here, because we can see that on the damage rolls, a 0 to 3 is stunned, a 4 to 8 is wounded, a 9 to 12 is incapacitated, a 13 to 15 is mortally wounded, and a 16 plus is killed. Well, when I'm running the game, I like to rationalise those to the same as the difficulty levels. So, very easy is 1 to 5, so I make stunned 1 to 5. Easy is 6 to 10, so that's a wound. Moderate is 11 to 15, so I make that an incapacitate. And 15 plus, I make mortally wounded, because I don't like killing characters outright. That's just the way I handle it. I also must note that 0 to 3 is stunned, so even if you totally soak a damage roll, reducing it to 0, you still are affected by a stun and take minus 1d. So if you're hit by any weapon, you're down 1 dice and you're taking stun damage. There's 2 ways of advancement in Star Wars 2nd edition. Firstly, force points, secondly, character points, and they're kind of interwoven. So I'll cover force points first. When you start play, if you're a force sensitive character, you get 2 force points. If you're a non-force sensitive, you get 1 force point. Now, when you spend a force point, it doubles all your dice rolls for 1 round, except for doing damage. Now, that means that if you're shooting a blaster with a 4 dice skill, you're now rolling 8 dice, which allows you to do quite incredible actions. Now, if you're doing those actions in a heroic way, so you're saving somebody's life, you're maneuvering your starship through an asteroid field, something like that, at the end of the adventure you get that force point back. However, if you spend that force point doing heroic action at the dramatic moment, so escaping from Darth Vader and defeating the evil Sith in a lightsaber fight or whatever, at the end of the adventure most likely, spending your force point in a heroic way at a dramatically appropriate moment means you get that force point back and another. Now, characters are not capped as force points if they're force sensitive, but non-force sensitive characters are capped at 5 force points. Now if we flick back a few pages to page 54, we can see halfway down the page here, if a non-force sensitive character earns more than his maximum number of force points, the character must trade all extra force points for character points. Character receives 3 character points for each force point traded in. So, while Jedi can have more force points and double their skills on a more common basis through an adventure, non-force sensitives get extra character points to compensate, so will increase their normal skills. And that does provide a certain amount of balance, something which is removed in the 2nd edition revised and expanded. That rule doesn't exist, it only exists in 2nd edition. Now character points, if we go back to page 58, where I put it originally, you earn through your adventure by completing tasks, by doing actions as your general experience reward. Now character points can be used to increase skill rolls during play by 1 dice. So if you think you're going to be short on something, you spend a character point and you gain extra dice to any dice roll. You can even increase damage by spending character points to increase the dice on the damage roll. However, that's counted as a dark side action and will earn you a dark side point. But character points generally are left to the end of the adventure to exchange for skills and attribute points. Now the cost of these are dealt with on page 13, so if I flip to there, advancing skills cost you 1 character point per dice to increase. So if you have a skill at 4 dice and you spend 4 character points, you increase that to 4 dice plus 1. Then another 4 will increase it to 4 dice plus 2, and another 4 will increase it to 5 dice, because there is no plus 3. Every time you reach the plus 3 pips, you're increasing it by another dice. And from then on, it'll cost you 5 character points per pip to increase. And you can also increase attributes by spending 10 times the cost. So if you're buying up a attribute from 2 dice to 2 dice plus 1, it's going to cost you 20 character points. So that's a very quick look at the 2nd edition Star Wars rules. Now, I personally prefer the 2nd edition revised and expanded rules. I think there's a lot to like that's changed. The scale rules especially make a massive difference. Plus, there's a few wee changes which keep the game flowing a bit better. More to my preference. I can understand why people like the 2nd edition, because it's a bit more stripped down and simple. I can understand why people like the 1st edition, because it's really basic and a stripped down rule set, but still a lot of fun. But, as always, I think I've whittled on about an old rule set for quite long enough. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment down below, as it does me massive favours with the YouTube algorithm. It really does. But, as always, most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.